Hi there. I'm not sure what the response to this video is going to be, and I don't mind either way. I think it's important for experiences and voices like mine to be out there. I got my degree in women's studies. I graduated with honors in 2009. When I was getting ready to decide what to take in university, I had first wanted to take psychology. I've always been interested in the human psyche and why we do things, and also how our early childhoods affect our future adult lives. But when I got to university and started to take some of the psych courses, we were required to do a few experiments or offer ourselves up as lab sort of test subjects. And I volunteered for one that they were checking basically the moods of women in their menstrual psyches. And I had to be attached with this cap that would measure my brain waves. And then I was shown a number of photos ranging in benign to traumatic photos. And it was very uncomfortable. And the cap hurt on my head. I didn't feel I could speak up. The people were friendly enough, but there was still a level of coldness. Needless to say, I ended up switching my degree early on. Like, I think I only was one semester as a psych undergrad, and then I decided to try creative writing. I love language. I love writing. I love poetry. I love expressing myself through the written word. I think it's an art form. I think it's beautiful, and those of us who can write literally can write reality and create characters, and also the way that I perceive reality. I wanted to be able to put it on paper and learn the skills behind it. So I switched my major to creative writing. That was another semester. As part of the undergrad requirements, you need to take one of these sort of general electives, or not one, a couple. I picked one that was called Gender in Contemporary Society. I was fascinated by it. I think I really enjoyed that I was finally learning about society at large. In the class I took, we learned about tanning beds, not just the tanning beds, but why people tan, and how it's changed from the past when a tan was seen as what a laborer had. If you were dark-skinned, that meant you worked out in the sun. But if you were light-skinned and people would powder themselves, it meant that you had the luxury to stay indoors and have people work for you. So tanning became a phenomenon towards the 60s. I would believe it was 60s when people started to take vacations more. You know, they had the whole American dream thing going on for a little bit in the 50s and 60s. I think it started to deteriorate in the late 70s. But people would go for tans. They'd go to Cuba or Mexico or Spain, and they would be in the sun, and suddenly a tan meant that you were prestigious. And anyway, that's just a backdrop of why I was interested. For some reason, that was fascinating to me, how our ideas of prestige have changed, and it's been a gendered, and how people can buy their genders. I was interested in how capitalism affects gender, and how through capitalism, women have been told we can buy sexy clothing and makeup, and it's just been sort of hand in hand with trying to sell us stuff, you know, and also how we've been told that we're, you know, maybe way too much, that we're fat. Like, the fashion industry and capitalism has affected the way that women see themselves and the way that men see women, and then increasingly how men saw themselves as more ads were targeted towards men, and sort of all this grooming that we see that men now do. And so it's all basically to make a profit, and they capitalize on our insecurities. Anyway, I was fascinated by all of this, and I enjoyed learning women's studies. It was called at the time at University of Arizona. It's now called gender studies, and there's this whole movement. But when I graduated in 2009, the rest of mainstream society wasn't yet aware of all this terminology of gender identity and sexual orientation and all this complexity. And, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my degree. I thought I would continue to further my education. I thought I had some support from some professors. I was going to actually work on a memoir. I had some professors looking at helping me edit it, about being multiracial or biracial in America. But I don't know, like towards the end of, before I got my degree, I started to get really disheartened by it. I'm not a fan of politics, and so whenever we did feminist theory or talked about the waves of feminism, I was least interested in it because I believe that politics is given to us as a way to keep us distracted. I believe that the United States and England and the Western world is an empire, just as the Roman Empire existed, and they gave people bread and circus, these illusions. I believe that, many people within politics believe they're doing something, but I think that real change comes from within, from healing ourselves. And so I was a little bit disheartened by some of my professors' political emphasis, and a lot of terminology that I learned in school is now being used in the mainstream. And I'm like, oh my goodness, why? I always am asking why. What's the agenda behind this? I am absolutely 100% for equal rights, okay? If we make human rights unalienable, or what do they call it? Unalienable human rights, things that we are born with, the right to pursue happiness, the right to safety, the right to pursue our goals. There are some basic human rights that we all are entitled to, and most of us, men and women, white and black and Mexican, all the rest of the races, we don't have our basic human rights. And it's not because one group is taking them. It's because as a species, we are being controlled. We are being controlled through our subconscious minds and our egos. And the more that I examine this and ask questions, and about myself too, because there was definitely an energy behind calling myself a feminist. You feel riled up. You feel like, yeah, I'm a feminist, and you want people to agree with you, and if they don't, I personally was considering them ignorant. I would consider people who didn't agree with me and see things the way that I saw as unopen, ignorant people. This was in my early 20s. And it took it took me going through my own personal crises to understand that we are being controlled on so many levels, and identity politics is one of the ways in which we're being controlled. Okay, so the ego loves to be right. The ego loves to have an identity. It fills it. It makes it feel unique and strong, especially if it's a political identity, because then you have a group of people who are behind you. And I mean, just think about it. How do you feel when you go to protest? There's this liveliness, this, yeah, we're going to win. All those people who are against us can, horrible things. People call themselves liberal, but then when you ask them how they feel about a conservative or a Trump supporter, they become medieval. The things that they say that they would do to Trump or those supporters, it's very, very hypocritical, and very few people ever catch themselves doing it. One of my friends, when Trump got elected, and by the way, I don't support any political leader. I think they're all puppets. Just want to put that out there. I'm not pro Trump. I'm not pro Hillary. I'm not pro anything. I'm pro human. Let's go human. Come on, we got to work together. But when Trump got in, I had most of my friends are liberal leaning, because that's who I hung out with in school, and only a few of us have gone beyond, and broken out of that, just the limited the limited identity of calling oneself liberal or conservative. It limits you, it boxes you in. But yes, my friend, she's a white woman, and she was going on and on about how racist rednecks elected this president, and how they were all just, ignorant and just bashing. And I just listened to her for a while, let her talk, and I said, but yet if those same people, those rednecks, said a negative thing against liberals or against people of color, you would attack them. So she was basically doing exactly the same thing that, she was behaving the same way of the people she was criticizing. I think that it traps us, and when we talk about feminism, what I see is that women are angry for sure, because we've been treated as property, we've been abused, we have been used, just like Mother Earth. We have amazing qualities, we have so much to give, and we've been taken advantage of a lot. I'm not saying it's men's fault, I think it's a systemic problem. It's a way to keep us controlled by giving privilege to one group. When you give privilege to men or to white people, their egos go ha-ti-ta-ti-ta, and the people that are left behind can also identify as victims. So it's keeping us trapped in egoic identities. That's all it is. And if we want to evolve and mature and take responsibility, we got to move beyond collecting as these groups. Feminism, I used to call myself a feminist, but I realize it's not celebrating the divine feminine qualities that make us so special. Our ability to create life within, our ability to nurture, our ability to communicate, our language skills. Like, we have so much going on of our natural divine feminine abilities that these things are not celebrated in feminism. Feminists say we want equal rights in a society that is broken. Why?